This week, we are not going to be talking about something that we've never played before, something that's just brand new. We're going to be talking about the game that on the very first podcast ever I announced was the greatest game of all time. Not my number one game of all time, but the number one game of all time. We're talking about Macher.
Macher. Freaking Macher. And I've always been interested in playing this game. We've talked about it. I was like, when are we going to play this game? And he's like, you've been saying, like, I would love to. Let's play it. And I was like, well, let's do it. But you felt like it needed 5 people. And people who were all game. I didn't realize it had a weight of 4.34.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't feel like it's that complicated, but maybe.
It's, once again, with those weightings, it's like, what is the weight referring to? Is it referring to the teach? The teach is not a weight of 4.3. It's not. It's a long teach, but it's totally digestible.
Right.
It's got a lot of rules.
The process doesn't totally feel organic. The phases. I don't know why. Maybe I don't. Well, it just feels kind of like, wait, so where are we at again? And like, you have to have like the sort of list.
Yeah,
it's something about it is not quite intuitive, or maybe I just haven't played enough to know.
Well, it is an older style game. The older style games were okay. In each round, we do 10 steps. Newer style games are not that way. It's your round. Your round is take one action, right? That's the difference.
Well, Tom, why don't you break it down? Why don't you sort of give the synopsis? I want to, I know I'm bringing this game to the table. This is, whatever, but
I can't wait. I want to thank you. I want to thank you so much, Jesse. You have been you've been pushing for this. You've been campaigning to review this. You have been nothing. You have been a whirling dervish of positivity about my favorite game. And I want to thank you because I'm been dying for a year to talk about this, and now finally we get to talk about this. Macher came out in 1986, and when you find out what the game really is, it's astonishing. It's like Karl-Heinz Schmiel, the designer, took a time machine back from 1998 or from 2005, went back to 1986 and designed the first game. The re-release that we're talking about is from 2019. The designer is Karl-Heinz Schmiel. The artist for this version is Harold Liske, and it is published by Spielworks. Macher, as I always tell people will ask me all the time, what's your favorite? You have all these games and you do all this sort of stuff. What's your favorite game of all time? I said Macher, and they're like, what? Macher? And there's what is it? Oh, it's a game about the German parliamentary election system, and then
and they fall asleep.
It always gets that reaction. It always gets the perfect reaction of like, oh god, okay, here we go, buckle in.
Yeah. It's so good though. It is so good.
It is. When I talk about this game, I talk about how there are games that are amazing simulations and so-so games. There are games that are amazing games and so-so simulations. Very, very rarely is there that game that is both an amazing simulation and an amazing game.
Yeah.
Twilight Struggle and Macher to me are the two best at being both. In this game,
but actually, I will say, like, by the way, like that is our Venn diagram. By the way,
you and me,
Twilight Struggle and Macher. I totally agree with you. I don't know where I'm going to rank Macher yet, but
it's fine.
I think it easily could be in the top 10.
Oh yeah.
I need to I want to meditate on it a little more. So it's a little sudden. I want to ease into this relationship. But
Jesse, you and I are going to be playing this game for decades. We are going to be playing this game a lot. I love this game. In this game, each player is playing a faction. They are playing a party in the German parliamentary election system. You could play the Grün Party or the Green Party. You could play the CDU, who are, in American terms, would be sort of the conservatives or the Republicans. You could play the SPD, which were the ex-communists of the Eastern Bloc, I believe, or at least the far left. Let's call them the far left. In the very first edition of Macher, those parties had variable start positions that were dictated by the party. So the party would be for this or against that or all that sort of stuff. The second edition and all future editions changed that up so players could choose what their starting positions were to some degree in terms of where they placed their resources, but their starting platforms were not set. Those were randomly determined. In the game, you are going to use your party's assets, which are party meeting markers, which we're going to call campaign workers. Media markers, which are the equivalent of media buys. You're buying media, you're buying ads and radio and all sorts of stuff.
You're switching issues, basically, the function.
In these things is what you're going to be trying to do. Exactly right. You have Shadow Cabinet, which are like your big heavy hitters that are going to come out, the celebrities and the important people who are going to come out and campaign for your candidates in this state. And you have donation cards, which are big special interest groups or big corporations that want to come and want to support your campaign, but at what cost? You also start off with a certain amount of party base. You have a certain number of people that are in your party to begin with, and that number can go up or can go down depending on what you do. For instance, if you take a big donation from a large company, some of your base is going to be unhappy with that. They're going to feel like maybe you've been bought and paid for, so your base is going to go down. Your supporters are going to go down. If you turn down that offer, well, guess what? Your situation might improve. There might be a whole bunch of people that look at you as a virtuous party, and they're going to go higher.
I like that. I didn't realize that was simulating that. I never quite understood the sort of real-world translation of that, but I like that a lot.
Yeah, isn't it good? Yeah. Another way your party base goes up is there'll be 4 opinion polls, mostly 4 opinion polls turned out each and every round, one for each state that is coming up in the election. And when those polls come out, we're bidding on them. Whoever bids the most is going to win that poll, and they can choose whether to publish it or bury it. And if you bury it, well, the people you're also going to get party base for that, because the people are going to be like, oh, look at him. He isn't even paying attention to the polls. Yay. The game is played over 6 rounds, and during those 6 rounds, we will play 7 state elections. The last round of the game is essentially going to be a 2-election round, where we're going to do 1 election and then immediately follow it up with a super short round to do the last election.
I love that the board is like you're looking at 4 different states, and that there's the current state that you're on, like this month or whatever it is, or this week, and then you got to focus on that if you have enough issues aligning with that, but you're also looking at the future, and it's so interesting to sort of plan for different things and how things evolve and change the future states as time passes. It's a really interesting dynamic.
Totally agree. Each state, so the current state has 4 issues that are important to that state. These are cards that will have one of 7 different issues on it. And they will either be pro or con those issues. So genetically modified food is the famous square tomato of the game. Virtually every version has that. So if your state is pro GMOs, then that state at one of its 4 issues is +sign and the square tomatoes. It could also be against Social Security reform. It could be pro-military or internal security. It used to be what the issue was called. It could be against nuclear power, things like that. So each state has 4 issues, but only in the current state do we have enough polling to know what all 4 of those issues are. The state that's one away, the one that's going to be the second round of the game, we only see 3 of the 4 issues that are important to them. The third state, we only see 2, and the fourth state, the one far away, we only know 1 of the issues that's going to be important in that state, which is really interesting because each player has 5 issue cards in front of them, and this is your starting party platform. This is basically what you say, this is what we believe in, and this is what we are for. But in addition to that, you have the ability to change those cards. What's
really interesting about this, by the way, sorry to cut you off.
Go, please jump. I could talk for hours, so please
it's great.
Just jump right in.
What's really interesting about this right now is obviously we're watching, Warren and Sanders, well, not Warren anymore, but Sanders and, Biden, and then we all go through this. They're, going from state to state in the primaries, and you're like, wow, this is what it really was like. I feel like I'm really in their shoes. So it makes it much more fun to play the game right now. If that was even happening, but apparently it's not anymore. But but it was a few weeks ago.
Oh yeah, we play this game every single election year. We always have, and what I do is so the German parliamentary election system, some people aren't that into that in our gaming group. We are Americans, and we don't like to learn about the rest of the world. So what I did was, a long time ago, I realized that this game perfectly fits the American presidential primary system well as well, in which there are multiple candidates that have different issues that are competing for delegates in different states, and they go to one state, and then they go to the next state, and then they go to the next state. So in that sense, it's very much the same. So what I did was I printed out cards that, instead of being the different German states, so, Bremen and Nordrhein-Westfalen and all that sort of stuff, instead the states are New Jersey and California. And when we played yesterday, Jesse, that's what we were talking about. We're like, oh, California's up next, and we would talk about that. But in addition to that, I made up instead of somebody being the Grün Party or somebody being the CDU.
Right.
They were, in one election, they were Trump. They were the Trump campaign, and they were the you name it, and we had
it was running at that time. Yeah,
I have them. I have them all. I still have them all. So we have a Democratic group that at the time was the Clinton campaign, the Obama campaign, the Dukakis campaign. We didn't have Dukakis, but that kind of thing. All that back. And to make it more personalized, the Shadow Cabinet cards, I had pictures and names of different famous people from that era that could potentially be there. So
how did that go over with the group?
They loved it because instead of just playing I'm playing my spokesman who I have to pay $10,000 to get him to go and campaign in Bremen. Now all of a sudden I'm playing Ann Coulter. And Ann Coulter is going to North Carolina, and she is going to, she's going to make sure that that healthcare, that the anti-healthcare position in there becomes the key issue for the election, right?
Awesome. And you're facilitating a narrative, right? So they're not just cards anymore. It's actually, you're telling a story, and people are able to track the flow of that. It's really awesome.
Exactly. So yeah, I still have those. Maybe I'll throw up on our Facebook page. Maybe I'll throw a snap or two of those things. So it goes without saying, if you've been listening to the podcast, that I approached this new edition with some great amount of trepidation. And
this was my intro to this world, was the new edition.
Yes.
So I knew that I'm going to be missing some. You've been talking about this for months leading up to the release, and how it's missing some key elements that you read in the PDF.
Yep.
And you were really worried about how that was going to play off. And playing that first time, I was like, I don't know what those other things are, but I love this game.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you what I think about it in a minute. I'm going to save that for now. Right now, I'm going to talk about what the differences are to some degree. So I'll give you an overview of what it is. Each round, we are going to do one election. One party, or sometimes more than one party, is going to win that election, and they're going to get certain benefits. They're in the new game. They're going to get victory points for winning the election. They're going to be able to move one of their media cubes up to the national board and get points for that as well. And then they're also going to get a certain number of delegates. Everybody, the winners, losers alike, are going to get delegates based on the number of votes that they got in that particular election.
Right. But the media influence going to the national board, right?
Yes.
That is not in the old edition.
Oh, yes, it is. Old and new. Yeah. Don't you remember we put those cubes up?
I'm sorry. I'm thinking about when the idea, because in the last game that we played.
Yes.
Because again, I came from the new version, trying the old version. I didn't realize that my putting media markers on a particular state, I thought that I could send them to the national.
The difference is this, is that if you win the election in the old game, you got to move a media marker up to the national board, which scores 25 points down to 10 points, depending on which election it is. In the new version, the winner of the election gets to put a media marker up, and whoever has media dominance, whoever has more media markers in that region than anybody else, they also get to put one up.
So it's always been it's 2 in the old version and the new version, but in the old version you can have the coalitions, which I'm sure you're going to mention.
Correct.
But that's how you can get 2 media markers if you guys are splitting that.
Correct. Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. So here are the differences. The difference number 1 is that the old game had a national board that also had issues. The biggest difference in the game was the issues. The idea being that when you win an election, you would take your media marker and put it up, and that's worth 20, 25 points, whatever, at the end of the game. But you would also take one of the 4 issues that state felt was most important, and you would put that on the national board.
You put 2, I thought.
Yes, if one player won solo, they would put up 2 issues. If a coalition won, they would each put up 1. There were different rules for how that worked, but basically, yes, 2 issues would go up.
Yeah.
And at the end of the game, whatever those issues were, there's 25 points for the leftmost issue. There's 10 points for the rightmost issue. But in addition to that, having your party have a similar platform to those national issues also meant that your base was increasing, that your party membership, that the people that were supporting you was constantly going up over the course of the game, because each round we would see how is my platform doing compared to the national board, which is very, very interesting, because that platform that you have for your party, you have to match it to the states that are coming up. If you don't match it to the states that are coming up, you're not going to win those states. But if you ignore matching it to the national board, it's going to cost you in a different way. And then to add even more of a complexity, in the old game, there was a building coalitions, which is there is coalitions in the new game. It just happens less often. Coalitions in the old game was basically this. I have 4 opportunities in the game when I play a Shadow Cabinet card to put a coalition marker down in a state. That means that I am now eligible to form a coalition with another player. And if we do that, they and I add our votes together to determine the winner. And
because the cap is 50
and the cap,
by yourself.
And the cap in the old version was 50 votes. So you could get to 50 votes and you could go no higher. So a team that works together and suddenly gets 80 votes is going to crush the other person that thought they were doing great and only got 50. And the fun of the game, the negotiations between you should ally with me or we should form a coalition versus you and I should form a coalition, gets even more crazy when you figure out that you can only form a coalition with another player if 2 of the issues on your platform match. And if for any reason 3 of your issues match, either one of you can force the other player into a coalition.
Right. And you don't have to match those ones that match don't have to coincide with the ones that are the state's issues.
Correct. They have nothing to do with it. So there are 3 different sets of issues that you're trying to look at. I have my platform. How does it match up to the other players? How does it match to the upcoming states? And how does it match up to the national board? And in there, my friends, is a multitude. It is so brain burnery. It is so fascinating, especially when there are different ways to change all of these things. The national board can be changed because if you win a future election, you can replace the issues that are on the national board. You can literally change them, sometimes to their opposite, sometimes to different things. The issues on your party platform you can change. I think that's a very good thing in the new game. I think the way that the party platform, your own platform changes in the new game is much less luck based than it was in the old game.
Right. I felt pretty locked into my issues.
Yeah.
And actually, so I guess mechanically in the new one you have more freedom, and maybe that's more interesting.
Yeah.
But maybe more realistically, in the older version, just the ability to switch your issues around. Yeah. In real life, you can't really do that so much. And so I feel it sacrifices a bit of that simulation for me.
Yeah, I think so too. I think the way it plays is probably better in the new version for that one particular aspect. But I think that the simulation of it may be better in the old version. I think that's probably
same thing with the coalition. Well, first of all, I can see why you like a 5-player game, and I've only played this with 4 people. I think each time we played it, it's only been 4 people. But you and Cal were always doing a coalition whenever you could.
Yeah.
And then it would, so it was just me and Ben, but we didn't have enough issues in common, so we couldn't even go up against you guys. And there was no other option for somebody else.
Yeah.
And I could see a really interesting dynamic with people being like, oh, it's not just two people pairing. Well, they're not going to pair it up with me, so will you pair it with me? Okay, because there's no other option. And so I can see that dynamic of being like that one person's going to get left out kind of thing.
Yes, and that fifth player just creates so many more different geometries, right? That there's so many more options in terms of who do we cut out, who makes, which way are these coalitions going? It really is.
But I was also frustrated by I was able, and again, maybe my thinking was too much on the new version. I don't remember the coalitions being in the new version. I'm vaguely remembering a symbol in the top right, but did we even play with that?
Yes, the way coalitions work in the new game is this. There are no symbols for coalitions. Anyone can form a coalition in any round, but coalitions only come into play if nobody gets to 50 votes in an election.
I think it was 60, right, for the new.
No, it's still 50. It's still 50. If nobody gets, but the calculation method for the new version is slightly different. So, but we don't need to get into that. That's a little bit in the weeds. But I ended up doing a state that you guys did a coalition on, and I ended up doing well in a state. And then normally I think I would have won, but since you guys did this coalition, you were able to go past the 50 marker, and so I was like, I kind of felt locked, and there was just kind of this helpless, like I can't really do anything about it. I'm sorry, and
I can't align with Ben, and so I felt, I don't know, and also I'm not sure again, simulation wise. Does that make sense? Is that how it would be in real life?
I mean, yes. The Bernie Sanders supporters would say that some of the other people were ganging up together to knock him down a peg, even though he was doing very well. So I think that's kind of what it's like. Listen, in the parliamentary election system, there are actual coalitions that happen, and that's what that is actually simulating. So you're right to say that for the American presidential primary system, the coalition thing is not quite accurate, but yes. it does have real world things, right?
Sure.
People agree to a ceasefire between them, and then they both negative campaign the other party, the other candidate, and so on and so forth. So it really is like that. So let's get into a couple of other things we want to talk about. Macher has had now 4 editions. First edition, the blue box, can't find it. Jennifer had one, and she sold it before I knew her, or early enough on that I didn't even know about it. They're crazy expensive.
Have you played that one?
Never played it. No, never played it. Never seen one in the flesh. So my understanding is that the second edition, which is the one that I have 2 copies of, I have one in shrink that is still because the one that I play with looks so battered and so beaten. That it's crazy. That was the Mosquito Edition, a German language only edition. You can get the English rules and all that sort of stuff for it, but it's German language edition. It is gorgeous. That is the best issue to have. It has probably the best rule set as well, I think, for the full game, if I'm being 100% honest. Then
what was the artwork that we played on Tabletop Simulator?
That was the 3rd edition. The 3rd edition had... Okay, the good thing about 3rd edition is that basically it was the same as the 2nd edition in terms of the rules. Only a few rules changes, and they weren't substantive enough. I don't mind playing by the 3rd edition rules. They're absolutely fine. They're only a tiny bit different than the 2nd edition rules. The bad thing is that it had some of the worst graphic design that I've seen, right?
So frustrating, especially on Tabletop Simulator when you can't see things. It's like laborious to kind of get to the other side of the table. I do like that sort of holding option. Thank God you said that out loud.
Oh yeah.
You can mouse over something and then hold option. It'll be like right in your face. And that was great and so necessary. But still, when you put the thing down and now you're looking at 4 different issues on the state, and then 5 issues in front of you, and some of the pictures look so similar, and I had to do it over and over and over again. And I never got over that.
They look identical. You have to be right next to them to see that they're 2 different issues. It's horrible. Listen, the rule book for the 3rd edition was printed in Comic Sans. I am not kidding you. I'm 100% serious. That's how out to lunch.
Wow.
Listen, I applaud Valley Games for bringing to life a game that hadn't been out in decades, and bringing it back and putting out an English language edition. Thank you for doing that. I wish that you had people that were paying attention to the graphic design of the game. So I
wait, because not only, by the way, did those icons look so similar, but to distinguish between the players' issues versus the state's issues had 4 copies of those icons.
Yep.
So they're shrunken. And you have to compare them. And 2 things, you're like, wait, we can't have 2 of the same issues right next to each other. Oh, those are different? Like, it's that kind of thing.
And then we have the 4th edition, which just came out, which is by far the most different version. It is different because of all the things that we said. Basically, it is a game that is designed to play in less time, which is important because Macher, it's a long game. It is, with our group, it is 4 to 5 hours. It is a 4 to 5 hour game. And let's face it, that's pushing it. It's shorter than some games, but it's longer than almost every Euro, and it is a classic heavy Euro game, and it plays long. That's just it. Now, when I play it, it doesn't feel long. It feels like I'm in a time warp, and it feels like 2 hours have gone by, and I look at the clock, and it's 1 a.m.
Yeah, you are just engaged at all times. Like if you're bored in that game, like you're not paying attention. If somebody's taking a long time, I'm okay with that because there's plenty to look at.
Sure, yeah.
There's plenty to plan for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have things that I can be looking at while you're going. I am looking at. Oh, you know what I just noticed? I just noticed that Jesse and I share 2 issues, and if I switch this one thing, I could force him into a coalition in the future, and I'm not sure he's going to notice that. That could be a really great thing to do.
Somebody's got media influence on this state.
Yes.
What issue are they going to switch?
Yes. It is fascinating. It's one of these games that the emergent gameplay from these simple systems is so complex and so deep, to the point of little things like if you have more media cubes in a region than anyone else does, in a state than anyone else does, you have media dominance. Media dominance means 2 things. It means that you can change one of the state's issues.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to make my platform more like the state's platform, I can make the state's platform more like mine, which is awesome. Yeah. Or
and more unlike your opponents.
That's exactly what I was about to say. Exactly right. And you're also immune to the negative effects of polls, because polls, which I mentioned really briefly, when a poll card comes out, it's bid on face down. We have no idea what the poll is. We know that it's coming out. Somebody's going to win that poll. They're going to flip it over, and 3 people are going to be going up in their trending in terms of their multiplier or their addition in the new version to the votes that they're going to be able to get for each campaign worker they have in their state is going to go up, and 2 of them are going to go down. And that change can be the difference between getting 20 votes and getting 50 votes in a state. Sometimes.
Right, because so in the new version, so that chart, right?
Yes.
It ranges from what, -2 to +2? Oh, no, it's +3, right?
It's a -2 to +3, yes.
And then so you're adding wherever you are on that chart plus how many. I think it's the differences in the newer version. It's that plus how many workers you have, and then multiplied by how many issues you have in common with the state.
Correct. So in the new version of the game, there are 4 issues that the state is concerned with. If for each agreement you have, you get a +1. For each disagreement, you have a -1. So ostensibly, you can have +4 to -4.
Except there's a doubling through the shadow cabinet.
Yes.
So one of them can be double, so you can have a max of 5 issues.
Right. And and in the new version, there are spaces for 8 campaign workers that you can put out in that region. 8 people that are arranging fundraisers and campaign events and door-to-door, get out the vote, all that sort of stuff. Those guys, plus your trend, wherever your trend is, whether it's at -2 or +2 or -3 or +3, that plus that times the agreements on the issues equals the number of votes that you are going to get for that round. And
so the max is what? So it's 11 times 5.
I think it's actually +4 in the new version, so I think it's 12 times 5.
That's right. That's why it's 60.
Yes,
right.
It's
60,
so
that's why I thought 60 was the.
But it's not. But it's not just 60, because you can convert those campaign workers into votes well before that election is coming due. When that election is 4 elections away, you can potentially convert some votes, some campaign workers into votes, and then put more workers in there next round. So you can be before what you saw Cal and I doing a lot in the last game, and you did in the game before that, was we got ourselves into position where we already had 40-something votes well before it was this state's turn to have the election. So
I was not capitalizing on any of that. It was a little stifling, I think, being on the tabletop simulator, and also adjusting to. I don't think there's been a game yet of the 3 times that I played that I haven't played by the right rules, because I think the first time. Yeah. We didn't want to spend too much time reading them, and you knew most of the rules from before. And then in the middle of the game, we sort of realized this was like this, actually. And
it was just that one
and
thing.
And then the second time, there was a few things from what I remember. Okay. And also maybe it's just like my first time learning it.
Sure.
Anything that you were explaining the first time that I may have just didn't grok or whatever, that just kind of went past, things that get lost in translation or whatever. But then there's also a couple things that were like, I feel like we're playing by the wrong rules. Mm-hmm. The second time we played, I thought I had it figured out, and it was like, actually, we were playing that wrong. It's actually this now. It's like, oh, okay. And then playing the third game, and there was some things that were just like the whole media thing. I went heavy in trying to do media dominance,
right?
And it just did not pay the dividends. I think I got second in that game somehow. And I'm not sure.
You certainly did. Yeah, you played a very good game, Jesse. You played a very strong game. You were getting points in every category. You had a lot of delegates. You made sure in those delegate-rich states like California that you were just maxing out. Mm-hmm. You got points in lots of different ways. So
I did get I think I maxed out on the each of the big states. So California, we called California the 81 and like the 54 one. I was able to align my issues with them enough to get at least the cap, but I never formed any coalitions.
No, you didn't. You were focused on matching the state boards and not worrying about the people boards, which in a couple times bit you in the back, and a couple times worked out for you.
Well, I wanted to. There was definitely a time when I was like, I feel like I'm not going to quite make it up to this 50 mark or whatever, and I was like, I'm going to put in my coalition marker, and then but you and Cal were always aligning with each other, and I couldn't ever team up with Ben. We were always just off by one issue.
It's true.
But it was interesting trying to convince Cal not to choose you. That was where we were all sort of vying for him to pick one of us, and he did good. He played a sneaky game. I feel like he because we're always worried about you, Tom. And I know you were saying at the beginning of the game, you're like, well, some people feel like you should worry about Cal, but he did good. He was pretty constant, and I feel he was kind of under the radar. That just kind of took off at the end.
Yeah, he did. He did a great job. That's what Macher is. Macher is, you're doing all these things. You're trying to win an election, and then you realize, oh boy, it's going to come down to who's my running mate. Who am I pairing up with this time? Yeah. No, you can't. If you pair up with him, this is what's going to happen next. Whatever you do, don't do that. And which is one of the great things, right? It's a political campaign. It is a knife fight in a phone booth, and it's so much fun. So the new version tries to reduce that 4.5 hour playtime. Let's say 4.5 hours. Some people can play it in 4 hours, no problem. It's one of those things that you don't really want to rush it, because a lot of what takes up the time is exactly what Jesse was just talking about. The cajoling and negotiating, and if you do this, I will scorch earth campaign you in the next state. I will ruin you. Yeah. I have media dominance there. I am going to change every issue until you have put so much into that state, and I will destroy you. Right? There's all sorts of things like that going on, and you kind of want that to play out. And because of that, it's going to take a while to get through the game. So the idea was to make this new game the full version of the new game, because there is a shorter version of the new game. I don't ever recommend that. I don't think that that's a good representation of what Macher actually is. They wanted to make it a shorter game. They wanted to put its playtime within the realm of games of today.
more accessible.
Yeah, which I get, and I in theory, I am down with, because I want more people to play this game. I want more people to see the amazing thing that is the Macher.
So, of the version that we played, the new version,
yes.
What was because we played the full version of the new version, right?
Yes, we did.
So what did they take out to make it more accessible?
Well, it only plays in 5 rounds instead of 6, so that's one thing. If you remember right, you
do single state, and then double state.
Correct, exactly right.
That's what we did.
No, in this one it was a single state for 5, and then 6 and 7 was one election.
Okay,
that's what it was. So, so that makes it shorter. And then there are just a bunch of other things. There is no national board. So if there's no national board, then when an election is done, you get 10 victory points for winning the election, as opposed to put issues up on the national board. That does a decent amount of shortening of the game, because it's shortening the decision space. The coalitions only happen if no one gets to 50 votes, and we played the game several times, and I don't think there was ever more than one election that didn't have somebody get to 50 votes, right? People were always getting to 50, so that means that coalitions are going to happen rarely. And if coalitions are going to happen rarely, then the negotiations for who am I going to form coalitions with is going to be something rare. And in reality, I believe I have to check the rules again, but I believe that a lot of negotiations are taken out. A lot of interesting decision spaces in the old game are removed. Which that was my big worry. My big worry with the new game is, how is the game going to play when all I see is, to an experienced Macher player, this decision in this part of the game is so important, and now it's gone. Now it's not even a decision. To give 2 examples of that, one is the first thing we do each round is we bid for start player, and in the new version, you bid, and if you win, you are the start player. The reason
in the old version?
In the new version.
Right.
You win and you're start player. And the reason that is a good thing in the new version is it makes it simpler. And the rules have been rewritten in such a way that most of the things that you're going to be doing in the game, you want to go first. There is an advantage.
Yeah, in the old version, you want to go last almost all the time.
Yeah,
right? So if you win your bid, you can choose who goes first.
I would say it's actually, in the games that I've played, it's probably closer to 80% of the time.
Yeah.
20% of the time, you realize that going first is the most important thing, because if I go before everybody else, I can force a coalition on this person, and that person already has 48 votes in the state that's coming up right now, and I'm going to vulture a win when I don't deserve a win at all. So it is more nuanced. It is more nuanced. There are sometimes when you're going to win the choose who goes first, and not choose yourself, not choose the person to your left. There could be a different way you want to go with that. That's more interesting. The campaign polls, the polls that come out in the old version, they're completely blank. There are 20 of them.
Blank on that out back side, yeah.
Correct. They're blank on the side, so you have no idea what's going to come. And when you successfully win that bid, you can either not publish the poll or publish any 2 results from that poll. Whatever you want. You get to choose what you want to do. In the new version, there are only 10 poll cards. I'll get to why that's a problem more in a minute. But on the back of the poll card, it gives one of the results. It gives the medium good result. So the good results are move up 3 on that trend, move up 2 on the trend, move up 1 on the trend, move down 1, and move down 2. It tells you what the +2 is. It tells the +2 trend person is the red player.
Yeah.
Yay, I know it's me. And right. If I'm the red player, hey, I know that I could bid on this and get and for sure go up 2. Or I could not bid on it because I know I'm not going to go down. And that's all I don't care about. Which is interesting. The only problem is that the rules say that if you win that bid, you either don't publish it, or what has to happen is your result happens and the 2 bad results happen. That's it.
Right.
That's it. It doesn't give you that choice. It doesn't give you that nuance. And the reason it doesn't is that coalitions aren't really a thing, right? in the old Macher, because you can always be forming coalitions, sometimes I'm going to use a poll result to boost up another player as a sort of payment for being able to form a coalition with that person in the next election or things like that. So little things like that. What did you think about the? Let's talk about. You've only seen the worst graphic design ever and the Spielworks new edition. What did you think of the art and the design of the new version?
I mean, I still have the old version now imprinted on my brain, but I don't remember ever having a problem. I thought it was perfectly fine, and I think it was good in the new version, right?
I agree. I think it wasn't quite up to the Mosquito version, the second edition, which is just kind of gorgeous in a very austere way. But I do think Spielworks did a good job. They have a good edition, with one exception, which is the paper money. Well, we don't play with paper money. We play with poker chips because
we have poker chips, yeah.
Because we are decent human beings, and we're a little fancy. I highly recommend playing with poker chips, because then when you're doing the blind bidding for who goes first in the beginning of a round, you put the chips in your fist and then everyone reveals. I think that's a lot easier than writing things down on a piece of paper and revealing it and all that. But this paper money in this game is god awful. It is on a like a Post-it note sort of thing where you rip off the individual piece of money. Now, I'm never going to play with money, so I don't care about that. But for people that are going to play with the money, boy, oh boy, that's bad money. That's bad. That's some bad stuff. So, yeah, I will tell you. I'm going to say right now, I've come around to this new version. I was walking in thinking I'm not going to like this. This is a travesty. This is terrible. My feelings are mixed on it, but I am not going to be giving this new version a bad review here. But first, I want to hear from you, Jesse. Tell me what you think about the old game. Tell me what you think about the new game, and tell me what you think in general.
The main things that I understand are missing from the old game are the coalition dynamic.
Yep.
And the sending states' issues that you've won to the national poll.
Those are the two big ones for sure.
So my question is there any reason we couldn't house rule at least the issues being sent to the national poll? Like, why not just, like, we could have that. I don't think that would change many of the, I mean, I'm curious, what would change, what sort of, could it imbalance the game in some way?
I don't know. I mean, it's theoretically possible. The problem is, you're cutting to my end comment, but I'll go with it now. My end comment is this. My end comment is, the sad thing for me is that so many games these days have the option to play classic and new, right? They have the option to play both. The backside of the new Macher board is blank. Why, oh why, did you not just print the other side with the classic Macher version and be able to play that? It wouldn't have taken much. It wouldn't have taken almost anything to do it. The problem is that we would need to mark the shadow cabinet cards so that the coalition tokens, some have coalition tokens on them and some don't. Introduce all of that. There's actually a bunch of things that would need to happen. So we could kludge it. We could make that happen. But yeah.
The coalition dynamic seems much more complicated. I don't know how much more, but I feel like the sending the issues to the national poll could be, you may have to do little slight adjustments to things. Can you explain again, like, what substitutes the delegate points? Like, since they don't have that in the new version.
Oh, you mean
how do you get points to make up for not?
No, you do get delegate points. What you don't get is you don't get the national board opinion points at the end of the game. Instead, if you win the election by yourself, you get 12 victory points for winning the election. So they took out the national board, and instead they're just giving you a flat number of victory points depending on how you won the election. But
you get points anyway for winning elections.
Not in the old game. Right? In the old game, when an election is done, everybody gets points based on the number of delegates they picked up.
Yeah.
Right? The winner gets to move up a marker, and they get to move up 2 issues, and that is the rest of the points in the game.
I see.
Right.
Well, I'm curious. What we should maybe try next is play the new version and make our own little board of national poll, and that you can now, you can send them up there and you have the same rules, or maybe make slight adjustments, or just test it out, see if it works.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting experiment. I would love to try that with you for sure.
I don't think it's going to extend the game that much.
Yeah, I agree with that. I love Macher. I love the new version of Macher, only a little bit less than the old one. I'm really happy. I hope more people play it. It's the only shame of it is that it doesn't play that much shorter. It plays shorter, but it doesn't play that much shorter. Now, there could be a psychological thing of once you get plus 4 hours, that becomes a no-go for some people, whereas 3.5 hours might be much more manageable. But that still falls into the realm of a long game for a lot of people.
I do think that the first time we played it, we actually didn't finish it, but I think our intention was to have only the 5 rounds.
Yeah,
which I think is the shorter game. We didn't finish it, but I think that's what we were intending to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's perfectly fine.
Okay.
If people want a shorter game.
Yeah.
I don't see. Look, you could keep going and going and going, and maybe have a super long game. And is that better? I don't know. But I think I don't see any reason why it's not a perfectly fine game doing that one state, double state.
Well, the reason why for me is that when you get dealt out your initial party platform and the states get their first opinions are put out for those states, some people are going to get lucky and they are going to see, oh, wow, I match up almost perfectly with the first state and I match up really well with the third state. If the game only lasts, 3 rounds, that is probably a advantage that can't be surmounted. But when it goes the regular length of the game, there are so many other opportunities that it's not you know what I mean? It's
you're flattening the curve.
Correct. I'm flattening the curve.
Very topical.
That's kind of what it is. Yeah. Absolutely. All right. So my negatives and positives. Negatives. This is I shudder to mention this because I don't want people thinking about this in this way, but I think I have to say it. There are only 10 poll cards in the new version. That's a problem. And because those cards have something on their backs, right? There are 2 cards that have yellow backs saying that the yellow player is going to get +2. There are 2 cards that have red backs, and they say the red player is going to have +2. Well, guess what? If you pay attention, if you card count, and who can't count 10 cards? Everybody can count 10 cards. It's the easiest thing in the world to do. I happen to know, or you can easily notice, that unfortunately there's a pattern to the cards. That if I am the green player, when the yellow card, face-up card comes up, I happen to know that card is not going to hurt me.
Ooh.
Right?
Right.
That's bad.
Right. That's bad.
That's bad. It's a shame because the original version had 20 cards and there are 21 auctions for the entire game. So you shuffle up the cards and so that the last one is completely random. It's brilliant. It's wonderful. It works fantastic. I wish that wasn't the case. So you really have to put yourself in a situation where do not pay attention to these cards in a very deep, heavy Euro game. Don't pay attention to the cards. It's almost like we're going to need to put up on the Geek some variant opinion cards for the game, just to mix it up and to have the full variation. So that's one.
I'm guessing. I'm sorry, guys. I think that they do that for balance reasons. Like they don't want to just make 20 or 30 of these, and then it happens to be benefiting only green because that's what end up in the mix. But maybe there's a way that you could sort of. It takes more setup, but maybe you still balance it. You could have 20 of them. And then only take in 10 that sort of balance. Like if there's 5 players, you're going to make sure that it's going to be balanced, but you don't know which one's going to get in there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the math of it in the first game works right. I think that of the 20 cards, each player color has the same benefit and minus for everything else. And so if that's the case, then it should be that way for in the other game. But yeah, I understand what you're saying.
It's not an issue at all in the old game because you can't see the backs.
Sure.
Max blank. That's the main issue. But it is interesting, and I could see why he added that, where you get a little hint of who this poll would be good for. Like, that's an interesting dynamic. I like that.
Yeah, I thought that knowing one of the results was interesting. I don't know if I like it better, but it didn't bother me that much, except for what it does, what I just explained, which is a big problem.
When it's blank, I feel like somebody might go, this is how I kind of feel about, putting money in for polls. They maybe either do it or they don't. There's a certain percentage. But I feel like by having a hint of this is going to be good for you, whether it's a state that you were going for versus something that you totally weren't. There's maybe like those fringe states that you're like, oh man, but this one could be good for me. That could change this one around. And maybe I feel like it creates more opportunities or dynamics to make it less,
it does.
Black and white.
It does. I think that with the blank opinion polls, I think there's a couple things. First of all, as the game goes on, you're paying attention to that a little bit. And you notice, you know what? There's been a lot of bad polls for my party. That probably means the deck is more stacked with good polls for my party. So you get a sense of things that way. That's number one. Number two, if I win a poll card, it's usually a good thing for me to win a poll card that's bad for me too. Sometimes that's a really good thing because I'm stopping the bad thing from happening. Right? There's benefits to that as well. One of the maxims of D. Macher is if you're going to win an election, make sure you win that election. So budget enough money to win that poll. Don't put things up to fate because it can really crush you. The very first election of last game, Cal won, I lost because the opinion poll went the wrong way, and I had overspent. I didn't have enough money to do what I needed to do to address that. Which is kind of classic. So that was the first thing. The first thing was the poll cards are a problem in the new game. The second thing is that the lack of a national board for those opinion cards, to me, reduces the joy of the game. They've simplified it by making it just you win the election and you get 10 points or 12 points or 8 points, depending on whether or not you won it, whether or not you got over 50 or whether or not you won it as a coalition and so on and so forth. It's a way to simplify the game, but it is a way that takes away one of the great things about the game. The fact that coalitions happen much less often is to me taking out one of my favorite things about the game. But that said, this game is very well designed. This new game is very well designed. Everything works in a very good way. Like all of the little decisions, like, wait, why did they change that rule? And then you play it and you're like, oh, they changed that rule for this. This is interesting. Suddenly the Shadow Cabinet cards have these red circled things that you can do on them. And when you do them, no one else can do them, which means the first player has an advantage in that case.
Right.
And they've really, Karl-Heinz Schmiel is a brilliant designer. He also designed Tribune, another one of our favorite games at the in Game Brain. Just did a really great job of designing a game and saying, look, I got to make some cuts here. I got to make this game shorter. I got to make it a little simpler. How can I do that without throwing the baby out with the bathwater? And I got to say, he really did do that. I would play, if somebody brought out the new version of D. Macher, I would play it. I would have no complaints about it. I might have to blind myself for the opinion poll cards, but other than that, and I would make sure that I brought chips so we didn't have to play with that money. But I would absolutely play that game. It was fun. It was great. It worked really, really well. It just wasn't. It didn't reach the highest height that the older version can meet. But if you want to have a game that is going to play in around 3 hours. That's what you have to do, and I get that, and I applaud that. If you balk at the idea of a 4.5 hour game, but you're interested in what we're talking about, get the new D. Macher. It's good. It's very, very good.
It's really good. It's really good, and you've heard a little bit of and I agree. I agree with Tom. I haven't played it with 5, but I know that he really feels like that is the proper dynamic, and I understand it. And so this game says it's 3 to 5. I'm looking at Board Game Geek right now and the polls on like what people feel, how the game works. Just to let you know, 3 is probably not a good number.
I don't think it's great, especially the old version. Actually, the new version probably plays better with 3 than the old version does, because coalitions with 3 players is a bad situation, right?
Yeah. Right. Yes. But 4 is viable.
Yep.
I think, and then 5 is overwhelmingly like that. That is the proper way to play it. But 4 works.
Do you want to know what I hate to use the word Nazi for a German game, but do you want to know what a Nazi I am? Until I played with you at Strategicon, I had never played 4-person Macher.
Wow.
Every time I insisted on, well, it's also one of these things that, because I've built it up so much, that when I say it's time for Macher, it's always who are we going to have to turn away, right? Who, the first 5 people to say yes, they're in, and that's what we're gonna play. We've never had a situation where people didn't want to do it. Especially. I make little standees for the campaign. So you have the Newt Gingrich campaign has a big thing that says Newt, and
I love it. That's awesome.
The Romney campaign had this wonderful campaign poster that you have right in front of you the whole time. So we make a night of it. It's a fun thing. At last,
I would love to put this game on the 8x8 challenge and maybe remove something else.
Oh, dude, we'd have to talk to some people and see if we can get that going. But I would love to do that. I'm so happy that I found somebody that shares my pseudo obsession with this game.
For sure.
And I've had such a great time playing this with you, Jesse. Because
likewise.
You've been you've never played Macher before, and your very first play, you were like, "Don't ally with him." But why are you doing that? Don't do that. You were like dead on. It was like as though you had been playing this game for decades. It was
man, it just speaks to me. I love it so much. I love sometimes my ADD brain, I can think about a lot of different things at once, and sometimes the analysis paralysis can happen on certain games. And then with this one, it just it's so great to be thinking about the minuscule things, like the current state, and then like the macro things that are going on. It really just speaks to me. I love it so much.
It's really so good. It's so good. So Macher is available everywhere games are sold right now. Whoa. No. Holy cow. Okay, so I just did something. I'm going to tell you what I did. I went to ebay.de, which is the German eBay, because I wanted to say, the one last thing I wanted to say is, hey, buy the Spielworks edition, play it. You're going to have a great time. You're going to love it. If you find that you want to go deeper down the rabbit hole and play the classic, long, amazing Macher, what you want to do is you want to look for the Mosquito Edition. The Mosquito Edition has the cover. It's sort of a yellowish, cream-colored cover with all of the, basically heraldry of the different states on the front of it. That's the one that you're looking for. And I'm looking here, and yes, they still have lots of copies of the Mosquito version available in Germany. You're going to have to get it shipped, so it might cost you a little bit of money. But I am looking here, and I am looking at a blue box original edition Macher in Germany. I am freaking out.
Are you getting it?
Oh my! I'm gonna see. It's always will they ship to the United States? And given the craziness going on right now, is that even a possibility right now? I don't even know. Right. I don't even know. But I am going to check this out. That was
cool.
That was Macher. That was the 1986 Macher and the 2019 Macher. Check it out. We could not. Yeah. Hopefully you can hear what giggly schoolboys we are. We absolutely love it.
Hey, if you enjoyed that video, you very well might enjoy the other videos you now see being suggested to you on screen. Also, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could like, share, or subscribe to our Game Brain channel. Thanks so much.